So this is a video about the primary source assignment 3. We had to go and we had to do research and write all like a paper about it. And now this vlog is about how I went about doing the research. So first I had my primary source, which was love letters between two people, and I'm like analyzing what courting was like in the 1800s. So I went to the museum when it was open, and I like wrote down little keynotes for the paper I would write later, like things that I found that would be interesting to analyze and to go back to and look at later. And I wrote it down in my notebook because you can't print it off or what am I trying to say? You can't print it off or like take the notes out, so I had to write everything down from the museum. And here's an example of that. And then we needed to get 2 secondary sources. So I went to the library and I had found this book, Searching the Heart. And this is actually, someone wrote about love letters and like dating in the 19th century. And it was perfect for what I'm doing because it was about like love letters specifically, and like how she kind of analyzed it in her own way. We can only choose 10 chapters, 10 pages to analyze from a secondary source. So I went to the contents page right here, and I went through the chapters, and I chose chapter 3 because it most closely relates to what I'm looking at, which is did I choose chapter? No, sorry, I chose chapter 2, which is falling in love, individualism, and the romantic self. And it talks about like the process of like falling in love and kind of key elements that go into the courting process of it mainly talks about romantic love, but it's like the key elements that goes into what romantic love was all about. And then we need another source, so I went on the internet, and I had actually found 2 articles. This is the one that I'm using, and I printed it off, and then I read it and did my own little like notations and marking it, and it's like kind of my own way of thinking of how to like break it down, and that way I could see like how everything relates to what I'm doing and what doesn't relate. So then after learning about everything separately, and I could then go back to the notes, the original primary source love notes, and choose what I wanted to make my paper about after having learned all the things I learned through my secondary sources. And I chose to write about like kind of like about what the book was talking about, is like the key elements of what makes a relationship kind of in the 1800s. I kind of talked about, and now I lost my notes, so a second. I broke it down into like what I found interesting and what I felt like I wanted to talk about, which was the intimacy that was involved in 1800s like relationships, jealousy / possessiveness, because I found that to be like a key element involved in relationships, and the concern that the 2 people had for one another, because that was important in kind of like showing that they really cared about each other. And then how family and friends were involved in the relationship, but they weren't really like if the woman wanted to date a guy, she didn't have to have approval from her parents. Like, it was still good to have approval, but you didn't absolutely need it in order to date somebody. Like, kind of how it was. The guy needed to go and ask for the permission to marry her. They didn't need to do that anymore. So I kind of found that interesting, and how Friends had a big, well, not with the couple that I'm reading about, but how Friends could have a big impact on people courting back then, which you still see today. But it was interesting. So I wanted to add that into my paper too. And so then I went through like all the sources I had, and I picked out everything that went along with those 4 things that I'm analyzing: the intimacy, jealousy / possession, concern, and family and friends. And I put them in, like, I put from the primary source them into my paper, so that I had like supporting evidence of what I was talking about from what I had learned through the book as a secondary source and the articles as a secondary source. So, make sure that I covered everything. So yeah, that's the process of how that's the process of what I went through to do the primary source assignment 3.